today we want to talk to you about the fact that snow and ice is not an excuse for getting in a car crash in Minnesota. We are Minnesotans, we should know how to drive in snow and ice, and we want to give you some examples of the excuses we hear and why they're not going to work if you hurt somebody in snow and icy conditions. Chuck, you got any examples?
I do, Jenny. Black ice. We hear people use that as an excuse all the time, but it's generally not even black ice that is causing the crash. Remember that black ice is caused in sub-zero temperatures. It's those days when you're sitting in traffic and that exhaust is all coming up around all the cars because it's so cold. Well, that exhaust is turning to water on the pavement and freezing. So you know it's happening and you have to drive slower because of that. It's that simple.
Rich, you got any examples?
I do. Insurance companies and drivers that make mistakes always try to say it's an unavoidable accident because they slid in on ice into someone. But we know that that's generally not the case, especially on ramps and bridges. We know in Minnesota it's the last thing you hear as you're walking out the door on the radio or the TV where they say, hey, be careful on those bridges and ramps. And for instance, I represented a tow truck driver that was on a ramp where a car had went into the ditch and he was towing the car out, and it was an icy ramp, but hundreds of cars were going by him as he was doing that. The lights were flashing, he's pulling this car out of the ditch, and one woman comes flying up and runs right into him. Hurts him really bad because he was outside of the truck and it hit into him. And that is not an unavoidable accident. Everybody else was able to safely do it. You have to slow down, drive more careful, especially around emergency situations like that. And unfortunately, he was hurt really bad. And that accident was not unavoidable, and almost all of them are not unavoidable.
Yeah, I would say, to sum it up, your responsibility driving in snow and ice is to drive reasonably for the conditions, okay? So that means that you, one, have to take account for what the conditions are before you leave the house and assess them while you're driving, and adjust your driving conduct accordingly. So if you need to drive below the speed limit to drive reasonably, that's what you got to do. If you need to have a bigger following distance, if you need to have snow tires on, all of those things are what we do to prevent collisions in snow and ice. So, in the end, if you are not doing what you're supposed to do as a Minnesotan in snow and ice, and you slide out and hurt somebody, ice and snow is not going to be an excuse. And if you need help this winter, if anything like this happens to you, we're here to help.